Hey, I've said that we've invited different folks who have different plans. Jim is actually my pastor. Jim's been a friend for a lot of years before he was my pastor. Now that I'm not a real pastor anymore and don't go to church to preach every Sunday morning, I often show up, I show up a fair amount at Carlisle United Methodist Church. Carlisle is an interesting church. It is the merger of Grace, First, and Allison United Methodist Churches. Worshiping attendance, and I'm just going to ballpark this, 350 or 60 at Grace, maybe 170 or 80 at Allison, maybe 120 at First. Those churches have now merged into one church. I was probably high on some of those numbers, but that's a ballpark. What I'm saying is they were medium to large churches that decided the best way they could serve Jesus Christ in that town was by merging. That's kind of radical thought, especially when we have churches of 12, 17, and 24 in one town who can't agree on that. Whenever you put something new together, you also have to put together plans that don't exactly look like what the other churches had. And I know that part of what they worked to put together was a new plan that not only was different than everything that had been there before, but really was geared up for a new day of making disciples. Jim, thanks.
Hey, thank you, Dennis. Hey, why don't you do me a favor? If you would, kind of scoot up and sit on the edge of your pew. Just there's only going to be a couple of seconds. Sit up on the edge of your pew, if you would, for me here. And what I want you to do now is just take in a deep breath. Take it in, hold it. Let it out. If nothing else happens during my keynote address, at least I've had you on the edge of your seat and I took your breath away. My job is done for the day as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I'm not sure why Dennis asked me to speak. Carlisle's been a really, really interesting story, and I'll tell more about that in a workshop, about bringing three large churches together. We had to create something brand new, the brand new vision that did everything, literally everything, differently from either of the previous three churches. But I've been really lucky to have some really dedicated lay folks, some super colleagues to help make all of that happen. So when he asked me to come and share, I thought, well, I don't know what I can share with you. It was really kind of broad in terms of what I wanted, what to talk about with you, and so I can only talk about my experience. I can't tell you anything you haven't already heard. I can't give you some new thought or give you some killer strategy that's going to work in your church. No, most of the stuff I learned the way that most people learn it. You learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes. And that's really how I learn. As a matter of fact, I've been making a lot of mistakes for 30 years. But I've learned a lot along the way. So all I can do is share some of that with you today. Now, if you're going to sacrifice, why not sacrifice for the right stuff? And it truly is about making disciples of Jesus Christ. All I want to share with you today are the 10 things that I've learned from attempting to lead a disciple-making church. And the first thing, the absolute foundational thing that I learned, number one, is that you have to bathe the effort in prayer. That you need to develop a prayer team of prayer warriors who will consistently pray that your church will be able to be used by God to make disciples. You got prayer warriors in your church. We all do. God has blessed us with that. Might be a uniform group. I mean, a group that you already have that prays in the church. It may be individuals that you are aware of. But one of the things I did was go out to people who I learned were prayer warriors, and I simply asked them, would you please pray that our church can be a disciple-making church? And I just left it at that. And can you pray for that every time you pray? So I have confidence in the 3 years that we've been in existence, we have had now groups of people praying that we would be a disciple-making church. I think that's number one. I think that's the absolute base foundation of one of the things I learned. You can't do this without prayer. Second thing I learned is that you need to be the right leader. Now, I say be the right leader because there's all kinds of leaders. There's all kinds of techniques to leadership. Can you show the next slide, please? Thank you. This is from Dan Goleman's book. If you haven't got the book or haven't read some of his stuff, it's great. I love this particular book because he does a great job of summing up some various leadership styles and giving examples of where they're appropriate and where they're inappropriate. One of the things we can't do in leadership, at least for me, is I have a tendency of a leadership style. We all have a tendency, but I knew I needed to learn how to be proficient at other styles as well when the situation called for it. And when we did the effort of merging 3 churches together, it called for it often to provide different styles of leadership. These are just 6 styles that Daniel Goleman has, but I think they're so good. I've met too many of my colleagues who say, well, this is who I am, this is how I lead, and take it or leave it. Well, when you do that, you've already knocked yourself out of the ballgame. You've already thrown away a tool chest of things that you can use to help make a disciple-making church. Just quickly running through those, the first one he has on the list is authoritative. The kinder thing to say there would be visionary, okay? A visionary approach. The great thing about being a visionary is that it can move people to vision something they can't see for themselves. And throughout all the process of making disciples, we always need to be ready to be that visionary leader, to paint a picture of the future for the congregation and for individuals. But we also need to learn how to be good coaches. Coaches are able to take individuals and look at their skills, gifts, and abilities and see how those would fit into the vision of the entire team, and then encourage and motivate that person to share those gifts in that kind of team so it can be the most effective team possible to meet the vision that you've set for the church. Goleman says the affiliative style, that it helps connect people to each other. This is where you make connections with people and that whole relationship thing. It's real important to be able to relate to people, isn't it? It's real important to be able to talk to folk, to be down home with them, to make them feel comfortable. And an affiliative style of leadership does that. There's a democratic style that he has here. That's a style that values everybody's input and seeks to gain everyone's input. That can be great when you're trying to build consensus moving forward. Now, the last 2 ones on the list are probably the most dangerous 2, and if not used correctly or well, can actually destroy what it is you're trying to do. Pace setters are people who are task-oriented, who work at such a pace and such a high quality that other people around them are either attracted and suck into that and then are encouraged and motivated to do more than they were doing before, or it can work just the opposite, that it sets such a high standard no one thinks they can reach it anymore. It works really well with already highly motivated groups where you take where they're at and give them more. Give them a higher vision and a higher standard. And the last one up there called commanding. Sometimes that's called coercive. But there are some situations when you're working with people and leading a church where if the crisis is big enough, I believe it's appropriate to stand up and say, folks, This is where we're headed, and this is how we're going to get there. You can use that well, or you can use that incorrectly, but I have found on occasion, that certainly isn't my style, but I've had to use it from time to time, and I've always done so fearfully and in trepidation because I know the consequences that can have when you don't use that well. But just to sum up, one of the things I've learned is you can't just be one kind of leader. You have to become reasonably proficient in all of these styles and learn when to use them and when not to use them. How did I learn when to use them and when not to use them? By my mistakes. By my mistakes along the way. The third thing that I learned in leading trying to put together a disciple-making congregation is that you have to establish a sense of urgency and excitement in order to move people from a state of complacency. You've got to create some kind of urgency within them. Our conference has given you a gift to do this. It's called Matthew 28. That's part of what Matthew 28 does, doesn't it? Comes in and creates with this report some really startling things that can, if communicated properly, wake them up. Let them see that there is a crisis here, there is a sense of urgency, and we ought to do something about that. I learned that if you're not excited about that or feel urgency as a leader, your congregation will never, ever feel that. You've got to be excited about it too, about the future, about the possibilities, about the change that's going to be required to make disciples of Jesus Christ. And you have to continually be excited about it. One of the things I learned that I really needed to do for me is I needed to put together a response to the question, why do I need to be a disciple of Jesus? I needed to put together a response that was 3 sentences long. Couldn't be paragraphs, couldn't be pages. I needed to have a quick retort to why, when people would ask, why do I need to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? And my quick response was, because your life's going to be better as a disciple of Jesus Christ than not. As a matter of fact, take a 60-day challenge. Live 30 days any way you want to live, then change and live 30 days the way Jesus wants you to live. At the end of 60 days, you come back to me and tell me which one gave you more peace, more satisfaction, and more ultimate happiness in your life. I actually had some people do it. They did. And they all came to the conclusion I knew that they would come to. Yeah. Following Jesus. So, some people just don't sense a crisis because it's been hidden from them by the administration maybe of the church, by the pastors of the church, by who knows what. And that's done a disservice to us. When we try to go forward and make a discipling church, we have to spend a lot of time convincing the folks that there's a problem because they just don't see or understand there's a problem. Sad thing is, along the way, they've kind of grown accustomed to a very low level of performance and expectation. The fourth thing I learned is that you need to put together a group with enough influence and power to lead the change. That may not be your administrative board or council or whatever administrative structure you have. You know who your power brokers are, and they're the people that have to be in that group. It has to be a group of people that are seen as credible. Because if they're not seen as credible, they will never stand up to the resistance they're going to face. And you're going to face a lot of resistance to this kind of thing. They have to be seen as credible. And here's another gift that comes from Matthew 28. And the gift is, Matthew 28, most every prescription I've ever read includes putting together a vision team. That's the group, right there. That's where you have that opportunity to put together that group of leaders with enough power and credibility that they can lead change. And then you have to take that group and turn them into a true group. They have to have a unique shared experience that is different from everyone else's. That's the fastest way to make a group, to turn a group into a group, is to have a unique, shared experience. If I had all kinds of time today with you, I would have given, every one of you would have received a number, a little slip of paper when you came in. I think there were 171 of you signed up. I would have had numbers 1 to 161 because I would have had 9 number 9s. And what I would have said is, go find a person with a number just like yours. Well, all but 9 of you would be able to find somebody. And then I'd say to that group of 9, now why don't you just sit right up here for today, and I want you to eat lunch together. And after lunch, I want you to spend 5 minutes talking about a whatever question. By the end of the day, they would begin thinking of themselves as a group. They had a unique, shared experience that was different from everyone else's. So it's not hard to take these people and turn them into a group. The fifth thing I learned in leading a disciple-making church is you really do have to develop a very clear and very uncomplicated vision that is laser-focused. What do I mean by that? It can't be more than 3 sentences. And it can't be run-on sentences. You know, it's got to be short. It's got to be to the point. It can't be filled with theological jargon. It's got to be very practical. It's just so important to do that. Now, I need to have, I'm going to pick 2 volunteers. Hear that? I'm going to pick 2 volunteers. All right. You, sir, can I have you as a volunteer? I promise I won't embarrass you too much. You'd go on right up to where I'm standing. Can I have you come on up? Sure. All right, if you would. Come on up here. Why don't you stand over here where folks can see you, if you would, here. Come on over here, you as well. My name's Jim. Charlie, how do you do? And Tina, how do you do? Tina, this is Charlie. Charlie, that's Tina. All right, I'd like you two to come together and go back to back. Back to back. Okay. Charlie, do you know how to tie a tie?
Yes.
Okay. Tina, do you know how to tie a tie? Well, that's what you're going to do. Here's the tie. These are my holiday ties. This has the dancing pilgrims. All right. And this has the Christmas light set. All right. So that's yours. Now, Charlie, what I want you to do is to teach Tina to tie a tie. This shouldn't be hard. and Tina, all we want you to do is everything Charlie tells you, but only what he tells you. All right? So any preconceived knowledge of tying a tie just went out the window. So Charlie, we're all yours. Why don't you go ahead?
Great. Tina, let's put this around our neck.
Now, wait a minute, Tina. How did you know to put it around your neck that way? Oh, okay.
All right. The fat side, pull that down a little lower.
I'll let you hear, Charlie.
All right. You're going to want to cross the longer, or the fat side, over top of the smaller side. Make a cross. Make an X.
How's it going, Tina? You got that?
All right. All right. Take that large piece that you laid over top of the small piece and go underneath. Wrap it behind. All right. I'm sure it looks great. I want to encourage you. Now take the working end or the large piece and go up, raise it up, and this is going to be hard. Stick that down through the loop you made, the loop around your neck. You're going to pull it out behind. All right, so you still got your 2 pieces. You got your working pieces now behind the smaller piece that's out in front. All right, great. We're going to pull that to the right, the working piece, pull that to the right. And you're going to come across to your left-hand side with that piece.
Okay.
All right. Still got the working piece here. You're going to come up from behind and underneath up to the loop again.
Okay.
All right. You're holding that up.
Yep.
All right, take that working end, and you're gonna, the piece you made earlier, how to describe it, sorry. You're gonna take that working end and stick it down through that front fold you made earlier. Sorry. If I could see you, I could help you.
All right, why don't you both turn around and face each other?
That looks good.
Let's give them a hand for participating. Yeah. Thank you.
Well done.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Charlie, for doing that. It's kind of a silly little exercise, but you kind of get the point, don't you? Sometimes we make things so incredibly difficult when we're trying to communicate something that it's the equivalent of trying to tell somebody who's never tie to tie, with your back to them. It's very, very hard to do. So the mission statement, this uncomplicated vision needs to be laser focused. One of the reasons we do vision statements in the church, and they were real popular in the 80s and in the 90s, and we were all rewriting them, and we put these teams together, and they took 2 years to come up with this magnificent statement, really tightly worded, and it was wonderful. And when it was done, they went, did that. They didn't do anything with them. The only reason you write vision statements is to motivate people. If your vision statement doesn't motivate anybody, move them to action, then you need to rewrite it because it's not working. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. Because from your vision will come your strategy. Hear that? From your vision will come your strategy. Your whole strategy on how to make disciples will come from the vision you have about making disciples. That's how critical, that's how important it is. That's why you need to write it. That's why everyone needs to know it. I say at Carlisle UMC, our vision statement is so simple, any fourth grader can repeat it back to you. I imagine any third grader can probably repeat it back to you. It's that simple. The sixth thing I learned, number 6, is that you have to over-communicate that vision once you decide what it is. And my rule of thumb for over-communicating is by the rule of 25. If you put it one place, you got to put it 24 more places. You got to plaster it everywhere that you can possibly think of. It has to absolutely be on everything you print. It has to absolutely be everywhere on your website, on every page. Has to be in your morning worship folder. Has to be in slides here and there in various ways and in posters. But you just want to inundate the vision. You want that to become so familiar with people that they can repeat it at a moment's notice. You see, people in the church will sacrifice if they know what they're sacrificing for. And the way you get into their heads about what you're about as a church is by communicating and over-communicating it constantly along the way. Now, what I found, one of the things I've learned, and it was very necessary as we were bringing together these 3 churches and merging them. I used to kid folks and laugh about it. They'd say, how's it going merging 3 churches together? And I said, well, they're not all mad at me all the time. All right? 2 churches, you only tried to make over 2 churches angry with you, so that you always had one place. But what I learned is I needed to be a non-anxious and constant present. had to be steady, had to say, this is the course, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. Over and over and over again. The key was being non-anxious. I could go home and throw things and yell at trees, but I couldn't do that in the church, because everything in their world was being uprooted, church world. I needed to be a place that was going to be steady and non-anxious, to give a sense that this will be all right, we'll live through this. The seventh thing I learned is that you need to change, redirect, or abolish structures that undermine the vision. That can be really difficult, but that absolutely has to be done. If the ministry doesn't fit the vision, then you can't do the ministry. It's just that simple, because the resources are too valuable to put into those places. One of the biggest fights or difficulties I've had in almost every church, fights is probably too strong a term. One of the biggest places of resistance has been when I try to change the role of the pastor from being the chaplain to being the leader. I fought it for 30 years. You're fighting it too. If you're trying to lead a disciple-making church, you're fighting it. And the resistance can be really strong and really great at times. But it's absolutely necessary because of the War Room movie, the clip. If you fundamentally believe that's what's at stake, then you have to do it. Absolutely have to do it. Have to get skilled on how to handle conflict. Because if you don't get skilled in how to handle conflict, those people who have bought into the vision and who are willing to sacrifice will quit on you. Let me say that again. They'll quit on you. If you see conflict in the church, you need to go address it now. You can't wait. May not want to, may not feel like it. But the consequences of not doing it are tremendous. The eighth thing I learned was to generate short-term wins. In other words, when a ministry got developed that fit the vision of the church, that made disciples. I remember one time it was, we had 3 more kids join the youth group. Well, we celebrated that in worship. Yes, that's part of the vision. That's part of what we're trying to do. 3 neighborhood kids came and were part of our worship. Our youth group this week. You do all you can to celebrate that. The things that, it's a lot like training animals. You just reward the behavior that you want to see. It's no different in the church in making a disciple-making church. Those things you reward. You just promote, and you publish, and you celebrate. Number 9 is to restructure in a way that encourages more wins. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm not just talking about leadership council, administrative board, council of ministries. I'm not talking about that kind of structure. Yes, you can do some things to help make your church operate more efficiently, and you ought to do those things. But the bigger thing to do, and what I can only speak of my experience right now at Carlisle, so forgive me on that. But what we also administratively restructured was how we allocated programming and money. And we borrowed a business model to do that. If you're in business, the business model, I forget the name of it, one of the sharp guys in our church had that. But he says in business, you have to spend 22% of your money on attracting new business. He says you're only allowed to spend 48% of your money on the business you already have. And 30% of your money needs to be spent on developing the new business that you have. So we took these percentages and we divided them up like this. We said programmatically and with our money, only 48% of our programs and 48% of our money will be spent on ourselves. To help develop disciples, to nurture them, to help them deepen their relationships. 30% of our programs and 30% of our money will be spent on inviting and welcoming and helping others to experience our church. And then 22% of our programs and our money will be spent on engaging the community and inviting people to experience Jesus. And so every ministry, you can't see this, but every ministry, whether it's Grow ministry, whether it's adult discipleship, whether it's the children's ministries, they get one of these charts and they have to put all their ministries in here and how much money they're spending, and they have to come up with these percentages. And it's really forced a lot of our ministries to say, you know, we really do only do stuff for ourselves. We really ought to think about doing something to engage the culture out beyond us. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying change some of the restructure in a way to encourage more wins from that. Number 10, the 10th thing I learned is to anchor the movement in church culture. You got to really show them how the decisions you made as a church helped you achieve the vision. And you got to tell them that, because if you don't tell them that, they'll think it was because something else. What do I mean by that? Well, if your church grows by 100 people in worship, and if you don't say these are new Christians who've come to experience Jesus with us in our church, or however, be truthful with them, however they get there, they're going to think it was because, gee, it must have been, so-and-so is related to so-and-so, and they brought the family, we got that new service down there, and they just come for the music. That's all they really like. You've got to tell them why they came, because if you don't, they'll think it's another reason, and it's something else. I know I had only 10 things to share with you of what I've learned, but I do have another one, number 11. And the other thing I learned is a disciple-making church is not for everyone, and that includes pastors. And that's okay. That's okay. There are going to be some people who will decide that the change you're asking for is too much. And that's okay. That's okay to do that, because what you get back is going to be a whole lot more. I'm going to close with this exercise, and I need your help to do this, and I hope you'll participate with this. I need you to stand up, and you're probably going to have to move a little bit, and that's okay, because you're going to go right to dinner right after this. But go to a place where at least you're not going to touch anybody with your arms. All right? So we got lots of space here. You can figure out where to do that. If everybody in your pew leaves, you just stay in your pew. That'll work fine, as long as you can't do this. All right? Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take your right arm and just put it straight out in front of you, thumb up, fingers pointed straight ahead. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn to the left. And we're going to turn to the left absolutely as far as you can turn. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Keep your feet planted straight. Okay? So you're twisting at the waist. Twist, 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 twist. Look, sight down your arm. Find a place on the wall. Twist as far as you can. Find the place on the wall where you stopped, or whatever is in front of your fingers. You got that spot? Got that spot? Remember it. Okay, come back. Come back to the center. Loosen up a little bit. Stick up your arm again. Thumb up, finger straight. And I want you to twist around, and I want you to go past that spot. All right? Remember, you went as far as you could the first time. So let's see. Let's turn, twist to the left, keep twisting, 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 twisting. Find that spot. Now go past it. Past that spot. Past that. Keep going if you can. Past that spot. Okay. Bring your arm back down. How many of you went past the spot? You can do more. Well, last thought. You can do more than you think you can. You really can. Bathe it with prayer. You can make disciples of Jesus Christ. He gave us all the tools we need. That's all I have for you.